The dust of Deadwood's main thoroughfare was a tawny, choking fog, perpetually stirred by the boots of disinterested men and the nervous hooves of penned animals. The air smelled of sweat, livestock, and the metallic tang of desperation. In a fly-blown corner of the chaotic market, wedged between a stack of dented mining pans and a cage of clucking chickens, Eliza stood on a hastily built crate, the splintered wood digging into the bare soles of her feet. Clad only in a threadbare shift, more a sack than a garment, that did little to shield her from the judgmental sun or the leering eyes, she was an item listed without a bill of sale. Her former captor, a grizzled trapper named Dobbs with breath like rotten meat and eyes like black pebbles, hawked his wares, in a booming, performative voice. Strong back, fair face, speaks English and can cipher. Won't last the hour, boys, she's a bargain at twice the price. The crowd, a shifting mass of prospectors, merchants, and outlaws, merely scoffed or offered crude jests. One man in a stained suit poked at her calf with his cane, assessing muscle like livestock. "Looks a bit used up, Dobbs. What's wrong with her?" Another, smelling of whiskey, shouted a derisively low bid, not for labor, but for baser, fleeting purposes. Their laughter was sharp and cruel, a weapon as palpable as a lash. Eliza's gaze was fixed on a distant, hazy mountain peak, her jaw set so tight it ached. She had retreated inside herself, to a silent, frozen place where the chill of humiliation couldn't reach her core. Dobbs, sensing the crowd's reluctance, grew venomous. "Stubborn as a mule, but break her in right and she'll be a fine drudge." He yanked her by the arm, causing her to stagger on the crate, a wave of hot shame finally flushing her cheeks. She was not a person here, but a problem, one nobody wanted to solve, a liability in human form. Just as Dobbs, his patience exhausted, growled about cutting his losses and giving her to the saloon for whiskey money, a different voice cut through the din. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of finality, like a heavy gate shutting. "How much?" The crowd, always eager for a new drama, parted slightly. The man was tall, broad in the shoulders under a simple trail-worn coat. His face was shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, his features etched by sun and wind into a landscape of quiet endurance. His eyes, a steady, clear blue, scanned the scene. They didn't linger on Eliza's exposed skin with lust, nor did they swim with facile pity. Instead, they held a cold, assessing clarity that took in Dobbs' greed, the crowd's vapidity, and Eliza's own desperate, frozen pride. He saw the subtle tremble in her hands clenched at her sides, the raw, fresh rope burns on her wrists, and most importantly, the fierce, unyielding light that still flickered, banked but not extinguished, deep in her shadowed eyes. Dobbs grinned, a gap-toothed expression of triumph. "For you, sir, a genuine steal. $75. The rancher didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his boot heels thudding softly in the dust. He ignored Dobbs entirely, his gaze now fully on Eliza. For a long, silent moment, he simply looked. He saw the intelligence behind the fear, the strength in her straight spine despite her trembling. He tossed a small leather purse at Dobbs' feet, the clink of coin unmistakable. "40. And you'll take it, or I'll have a word with the marshal about where you acquired indentured stock, without papers." His voice left no room for argument. The transaction, such as it was complete. The journey out of Deadwood was a pilgrimage conducted in profound silence. The rancher, who'd grunted his name as John Hale, had, without ceremony or a word, shrugged out of his own heavy denim jacket and wrapped it around Eliza's shoulders before lifting her onto his broad, placid mare. The residual warmth from his body seeped into her, a startling contrast to the cold exposure of the market. He led the horse on foot, not speaking, his own sturdy gelding trailing behind obediently. They climbed out of the mining camp's stench and clamor, ascending into the pine-scented hills where the only sounds were the creak of saddle leather, the sigh of the wind, and the steady crunch of his boots on the trail. Eliza, shrouded in the oversized jacket that smelled of wood smoke, pine, and honest sweat, watched his back, the set of his shoulders, the careful, sure way he chose a path around rocky outcrops and muddy washes. He hadn't looked at her like the men in the market. His act felt less like a gallant rescue and more like a practical, almost grim, correction of a wrong. He had seen something broken and had the means to temporarily fix it. Yet, he'd given her his coat, his silence, and now, the dignity of not being observed. It was a gift, she slowly realized. Space to breathe, to exist without immediate demands or violation. As the sun began its descent, painting the vast sky in breathtaking washes of gold and violet, a modest homestead materialized in a grassy valley. It was no palace, a sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney, a well-ordered corral, a tidy barn, and the soft, contented lowing of cattle in a nearby pasture. It spoke of relentless work, but also of care and stability. Before they reached the gate, a woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. Martha's eyes, the same clear blue as John's but softened by lines of kindness and worry, took in the scene, the strange woman wearing her husband's jacket, the bare legs, the hollow-eyed expression. Her gaze flicked to John, a silent question passing between them, and then filled with a merciful, practical calm. She did not gasp or fuss. John spoke, his first words in hours. "Martha, this is Eliza. She'll need clothes, food, and no questions tonight." It was an instruction, gentle but firm. Martha simply nodded, stepping forward with a smile that was a warm blanket in itself, devoid of pity or prying curiosity. "Welcome, child," she said, her voice like creek water over stones. Inside, by the gentle light of a kerosene lamp, Eliza was given a simple, clean calico dress, a bowl of rich venison stew, and a cot made up with thick quilts near the fireplace. The normality of it was almost overwhelming. Later, as she lay staring at the smoke-darkened beams, listening to the pop of the dying fire, she heard the low murmur of voices from the main room. Martha's gentle tone, then John's steady baritone, just audible. "Wasn't right, Martha. Saw it in her eyes. Wasn't an animal. Couldn't leave her there to that." The simple, unadorned decency of it struck Eliza harder than any cruelty had. A dam within her broke. Silent, racking sobs shook her frame, tears soaking into the clean pillowcase. For the first time in a year, she cried not from terror or pain, but from the sheer, disarming relief of being seen as human. Weeks unfurled into a month, marked by the rhythm of dawn chores and evening quiet. Eliza worked. She learned to milk the cows, their warm flanks steady under her forehead, to tend the kitchen garden, to mend fences with wire and stubborn determination. The labor was hard but honest, and it began to rebuild her body, knitting muscle over bone, and her spirit, layer by fragile layer. Martha was a patient, gentle teacher, her instructions always given with a touch on the arm or a shared smile over a perfectly baked loaf. John remained a man of few words, but his actions were a language she learned to decipher, an extra quilt folded at the foot of her cot on a cold night, the careful correction of her grip on a saw, the subtle, protective way he would position himself between her and any passing stranger on their rare, tense supply trips to a smaller, neighboring town. One cool afternoon, while mending a harness in the dappled shade of the barn, the words finally came. She spoke in fragments, her eyes on her working hands, telling them of a life back east, of a naive trust in a smooth-talking suitor who promised marriage and delivered betrayal, selling her westward to settle a debt. She spoke of the long, dehumanizing journey with Dobbs, a waking nightmare. John listened, oiling a saddle, his quiet, unwavering presence giving her the courage to voice the horrors. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer hollow consolation. He simply absorbed her truth, and in doing so, honored it. The following morning, a cloud of dust announced a visitor. A buggy drawn by a fine bay horse approached. Eliza's blood ran cold, old fears surging, but the driver was a woman, elegant in a traveling suit, her face anxious. It was John's younger sister, Clara, from Cheyenne. Her eyes, so like her brother's, locked on Eliza with shocking intensity. After a hushed, urgent conversation with John and Martha on the porch, Clara approached Eliza, who was weeding the garden, her hands soiled with earth. Clara's voice trembled. "Your name is Eliza Forrester. Of Boston. Your father was Alistair Forrester." Eliza froze, the world narrowing to the woman's earnest face. She nodded, unable to speak. Clara clutched her hands, heedless of the dirt. "I knew it. I have a daguerreotype of your mother, my dearest friend from school. You are her living image. The family searched for you for over a year after you vanished. They believed you were dead, lost to scandal or misfortune. A lost heiress, not a slave. A fortune, a name, a life of ease waiting in a gilded cage back east." That evening, John found Eliza by the creek, where she often went to think. The water's chatter filled the silence between them. "Clara can take you home," he said, his voice low. "You'll have everything back. Security, your name, your life." He stared at the flowing water, his profile stark. Eliza looked at him, Then at the land he had built with his own hands, the rolling hills holding his cattle, the sturdy cabin glowing with lamplight, the woman who was his heart waiting inside. He had bought her for $40, but had given her back her sovereignty, her safety, her very self, without ever asking for a single thing in return. "They are my past, John," she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying over the water. This hard work, this quiet, this peace, this is my present. My chosen present. If you'll have me stay." He was silent for a long moment, the only sound the creak and the beat of her own heart. Then he removed his hat, a gesture of profound vulnerability, and turned to her. His blue eyes, usually so guarded, were wide open, reflecting the last of the twilight. "Eliza," he said, the single word a vow, a promise, a beginning. "This land, and my heart, have had a space waiting, empty. I just didn't know it was your shape until I saw you standing in that godforsaken market." Under the vast, starlit tapestry of the western sky, she took his work-roughened hand, her own now strong and capable, and knew she was not just home, but truly, and finally, chosen.